hand gesture. The thumbs up. It's kind of old school. He's gonna need to really work on that one. So good evening. It is 6:04 on the 7th of December. And we are the Board of Select People. And so my understanding is in order to go to an executive session, I have to do the opening for regular session, which is to say welcome, and that this is broadcast through Zoom and NCTV, and that we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance first, according to my little schedule.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So then, all right, I've got my little cheat sheet. And I opened the public session, which we did. We'll check that box. And the next box is to publicly announce that the purpose of this executive session under Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, is for the purpose of discussing the contract renewal of non-union personnel, namely in this instance, the town administrator. Having the discussion in open session would have a detrimental effect on the public body's negotiating position, which is why it is appropriate for executive session, and therefore open session will reconvene at the conclusion of the executive session. Wherefore, do I have a motion?
I move that the board vote to convene an executive session under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, for the purpose of discussing the contract renewal of non-union personnel, namely the town administrator.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And now it says I'm going to pull them, so CC Van Tyne, aye.
Anita Mecklenburg, aye.
Kevin Calcutt, aye.
We haven't pulled in a while. It's been like mid-pandemic was the last time. Nice not to have to pull. I think that's all votes taken during executive session must be recorded as roll call votes and shall become a part of the record. And now we're done, right? We're in executive session.
pledge.
Oh, okay, great. And I just gave her the thumbs up back.
Okay.
Welcome back. Welcome back to our meeting. Now we're back in public session, and Blythe, would you like to take us through this evening's public agenda?
Yes, first order of business is to continue the public hearing for the Verizon Eversource pole on Tucker Road. Public comment follows that. The other action items are to discuss a license with the Department of Developmental Service, the Rentham Development Center, for access to the Lind Conservation Land, to consider whether to allow any of the liquor licensed restaurants to extend their hours for New Year's Eve this year, to consider directional sign permits, to consider waiving a public hearing for the renewal of the Class 3 license for Norfolk Auto Repair, and then to please consider approval of a number of licenses, including common vic, all alcohol, entertainment, Class 1, 2, and 3 auto dealers and taxi. And getting down to discussion. The only discussion item is my town administrator update, and I'll handle the COVID updates then. And then we have 5 warrants to approve and 3 sets of minutes to approve.
All right, well then, feels like it's amplifying a little too much for my comfort. Without further ado, shall we attend to item number 1?
So at the last meeting, the board opened the public hearing on this poll petition and decided to continue it because, if you recall, there was concern by our public safety departments and public works that the actual poll location was not far enough back off the road, and that could be a concern. So you read the opening, the notice, and we decided to continue it. You voted on that, and so since then we've received the update from Verizon and Eversource that they have actually planned to move the pole back. We have the drawing, it's in your packet. The gentleman on the call is, which person on the Zoom?
I believe it's Dawn.
So from either Eversource or Verizon, I'm sorry, Mr. Voner is here to answer any questions the board has, but basically they have complied with what we requested, which was to move it back. So you can take input from him and any public who wants to comment on it. And then if you're satisfied you have everything you need, you can vote to close the hearing and then vote on the petition.
So I thought he was coming on, and then he disappeared. Does Mr. Voner have anything you would like to add or say? Either of the Mr. Voners? I'm assuming, because I see two, that he's having some
think-
sound issues.
One looks like it has audio and one doesn't, but it's muted.
Right.
If you would like to speak, you would need to unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi, yes. No, I think it was summed up pretty well as to the changes that were made, and I'm just here to answer any questions or make take any more steps that we might need to do to move forward. So I don't have anything new to add beyond what was already spoken to.
All right, well, I don't have any questions. I'll see if either of the other board members do, and then open it to the public for any questions they might have. It's a public hearing.
I do not have any questions at this time.
None from my end either.
All right, and do we have any, we'll start with the audience. I don't see anyone in the audience with a question. Is there anybody on the computer putting on their little fake hand up? Okay, well then, that does it. So Blythe, now we're closing the public hearing, correct?
So there's 2 motions in your packet in the background, one to close it and then one to vote on it if that's what the board wishes to do.
All right, so starting with the first, do I have a motion to close?
I move that the board vote to close the public hearing for the Verizon Eversource poll petition on Tucker Road.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, does anyone want to discuss, now that the public hearing is closed, whether or not to grant permission to Verizon and Eversource discussion?
Never mind.
No, I'm glad they're moving the poll.
No, yep. And so do I have a motion regarding, granting of permission?
I move that the board vote to grant permission to Verizon New England Incorporated and Eversource to locate one jointly owned pole number T.1/2/E.1/2 on the southeast side of Tucker Road at a point approximately 32 feet northeasterly from the center line of Medway Street and 6 feet back from the edge of the paved surface.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you very much, Mr. Voner, for your time. I think we
Thank
should,
you, folks. I appreciate your help.
I think we should have like naming contests for the polls in the future, because I just feel like T.1/2 just doesn't have a ring to it. But in any event,
Doesn't.
moving on. Public comment is next. Perhaps someone will have a suggestion for things to name the polls. Do we have anybody with any comments that they want to make in public comment this evening? See, nobody's in the audience volunteering. How about on the, no? Okay, well then, that, moving right along, next is number 3.
The third item is a license to be approved with the Department of Developmental Service, the Rentham Development Center. So it was brought to my attention by the conservation agent, Janet DeLonga, that the town has for a few years had an annual license with the state for the ability for the town to access the Lynn Farm conservation area off of North Street, in the parking area that some people think are referred to as where the lazy loopers fly. And this was last done by the town in 2016. I cannot answer for you why it hasn't come up annually since then. My impression is that there's been a lot of changeover at the state. Perhaps they didn't remember to tell us to renew it, and maybe it wasn't known by staff here, but nevertheless, it's been brought to our attention and we should sort it out. So as I say, this gives us the right to have people be able to use the state's land to drive in there, to park, to be able to hike to Lynn Farm, and be able to access the trails and do some light maintenance. Also, as an expectation, the DPW will plow it. Checked with them, and they don't plow it necessarily at every storm. I'm sure you've seen the license, it says, as needed, and so we treat it as, well, when it's particularly deep. After we've finished other work, we'll go out there and do that. So our recommendation is that it be renewed, because it should be in place so that we have the right to go across this land. And we've also made sure that we have the up-to-date insurance policy that goes with it, which is also in your packet. I would also just alert you that there is some interest by conservation in more actively using Lynn Farm, and they are talking with a private firm about being able to use it more, maybe having some mountain bike classes, things like that. And so if that changes, we may be bringing this back to you at some point if it needs to be amended, but for now, we'd ask that you approve it for the next year. And it actually should have been live as of November 1st, but we just received it in the last week and a half. Yeah. So that's everything I know about at this point. If you have any questions, I will try to answer those.
I don't know that I do. I see that the consideration is 0, which I like. The licensees is for nature walks, but I'm assuming any sort of light. Is it because of the fact that it's limited to nature walks that you'd have to come back for things like?
If there's any more
mountain biking?
intensive use or different use, the state would need to agree to that. And what I also meant to say is that this is a license, not an easement, and I'm assuming, though I haven't talked to anybody at the state, they prefer to be an annual license, just because if they ever make changes to what they want to do with that property, they don't
Right.
want to be in a long-term relationship with us
Right.
to access it.
That makes sense. So I have no questions. Anita?
The only thing I was confused about was we're asking for not just town access, but public access to that area, right?
Yes, I guess I would infer public access.
Public, So we're asking for public access to the Lind Farm.
Yes, and this is where people would start. My understanding is we've owned Lind Farm for about 20 years, and there have been other points of access over the years. I can't answer why those aren't available to us anymore, but this is the one that's been used most recently in the last number of years. And so we're just trying to get the paperwork back in order.
Thank you.
Blythe, can you confirm that the plowing and maintenance of the trails is actively being done by the town?
Not necessarily by Public Works. I'm not aware that there's any problem or lack of maintenance. I'm not sure if that's because there's regularly people walking it and it's kind of taking care of itself. But as conservation talks about what they might want to do differently, I think part of that is perhaps there might be more trail maintenance or trail work done in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Right now, the trail maintenance that, if I'm not mistaken, is what's on page 3 of 15, right? In purposes and use, it's just simply limited trimming, which I would imagine is just if it's dangerous
Low-hanging branch.
obstruction.
I mean, it's not out,
Only trail repair if there's erosion, trash pickup. I have nothing further. So do we need to vote?
I move that the board approve the renewal of the long-form license with the Department of Development Service, Rentham Development Center, for access to Lynn Conservation Land for the period of November 1st, 2021 to October 30th, 2022.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 4.
this year New Year's Eve is on a Friday, and typically we have, the boards have voted to allow the restaurants that have liquor licenses to serve past the usual time of 1 a.m. If they request it. So we've reached out to Eagle Brook, Horse and Carriage, Novatos, and Silla's to see if anybody does. At this point, we've heard back from everybody but Novatos, and that none of them want to have their hours extended yet. So I actually would ask that we table this one, and if Novatos is interested, we'll come back to you on the 21st. We can take care of it then. I'm sure they're busy. We reached out to them several times and we just haven't heard back, and want to make sure we touch base with them in case they do. So, if they're watching, get a hold of Judith.
And they want to stay open. Those are the
Please
two.
let us know so we can vote on this next time.
All right, so is there anything we need to do?
Nope, nope.
No action?
Just pass on it.
So I guess that brings us to number 5.
It does. So another thing that we do at the end of the year, and that's kind of the theme of this, most of this meeting tonight, is directional sign permits. I think you may recall from last year that there are a couple of businesses in town who do like to still have the directional permit that says, a sign that says this way to Four Kicks or that way to Dunkin' Donuts Golf Subway. So as we did last year, we've checked in with the businesses and evaluated the signs, and the folks that are listed here want to have those permits renewed. They pay an annual fee of $5 to have be able to have the signs up.
Who pays for the signs initially?
They do. They provide the sign.
So we're leasing the little space in the ground?
For which we will bring in $15 next year.
It all adds up.
It does.
So I don't have any questions.
I move that the board vote to renew permits for directional signs for the following businesses: Cable Land, Dunkin' Donuts Golf Subway, and the Four Kicks Sports Complex for 2022.
Second.
All those in favor? Number 6.
So, one of the things we do is renew various classes of auto licenses, including Class 3, which is for junk cars. And there, we only have one company, Norfolk Auto, who holds a license for that. And they've held it for, many, many years. It's been the board's practice, the town's practice, to waive a requirement for a public hearing if there's no issues that have been arisen throughout the year, and there haven't. In fact, this license actually came up mid-year this year because there was a transfer of the name, if you
Right.
recall. So, but besides that, we do have our building department zoning enforcement officer keep an eye on things, and happy to report no issues. So we would recommend the board vote to waive the hearing.
Does anyone have any, I have no questions, do they? Kevin?
No.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the board waive the Class 3 hearing for Norfolk Auto Repair.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 7.
So number 7 is the renewal of all of the licenses that the board does, and as you know, they happen at this time of year, so they're actually all listed on the agenda for the meeting. They are for, as I mentioned, liquor, common vic, vicular entertainment, class 1, 2, and 3 auto dealers, and taxi. There are some really thorough spreadsheets in your file if you wanted to review them of all the steps that go into obtaining all of the paperwork for each of these, and if you wanted to see any particular business's license details, Amanda has all those with her just in case. But generally, all of those, the process has gone exceedingly smoothly, and I give Judith a lot of credit for it. She just took it over, and she never did it before this year. So all of them are in fairly good order. The only thing I would say, and of course, let me find my note, is that we do have, oh, yeah, I got it right here. I marked it up, but that's awesome, thank you. A couple things I would point out to you, as we do every year, besides all of the paperwork forms and insurance certificates and so on, there's also inspections that has to happen, and that's being done actively by the building department and the fire department as required. Just to give you what's going on with those, we do have 2 auto businesses that we're waiting to get inspections completed on, and one for Common Vic for Organic Buzz Cafe. I have no worries that those will all get done. They're all in process. The only business that we really haven't been able to arrange yet is Priscilla's Coffee House, and we're in touch with them. So I would suggest that the board move ahead with all of these with the exception of one. We have been having conversations with Carvana's on Dedham Street, 269 to 271. They're a little bit different with their class 2 in that a number of years ago the town decided they didn't want to have any more and they changed the zoning. And then this business came along and the zoning was changed yet again to allow internet-only businesses. So what that means is they're not allowed to have any cars out front. And we sent them a notice in June that we saw a number of cars out front and it wasn't resolved. We've since followed up and they've agreed to move them, but late this afternoon when Mr. Bullock went out, there were yet again lots of cars out front and car carriers. So we said, I said to them at 5:30, I'm going to ask the board to hold on this one. We've got the meeting on the 21st. We can take care of it then. Let's get together and have a meeting and figure out how we're going to get you in compliance so that we can pass this confidently. I think the good news is their business has really grown, and that's great, but we got to find the balance with what the town's zoning requires. So I would ask that when we get to the motions that we hold that one out of the list. We vote for all of them but that. And the last thing is the Norfolk Town Taxi. That was renewed mid-year because they had wanted to wait till further into the pandemic. They do have an inspection to have done as well, and again, we're not worried about that. So I know I've talked at you a lot. I don't know if you have any questions or that.
What is that? I understand that we're not voting for it right now and that it's good news that they're growing, but what is their response when they say they're going to move something and then it doesn't get moved and we say, hey, they're still there? Do they say, oops, my bad? Or do they say, no, there isn't? Like, how do you?
Well, so that took up a bit of today. So this morning I called, talked to them, and they said, we've moved all the cars. They're all gone. They're behind the fence. What happens is they have cars being dropped off and picked up from there all the time. and supposedly they can't back the car carrier behind the fence to load the cars, so they're bringing them out. And we said, okay, if they're there temporarily, because that's the logistics of moving cars, perhaps it's understandable, but when we went by and there were 20 of them and 4 car carriers, we started to say, wait a second, this, gotta find a balance between.
Okay, I see, yeah.
And also, they have a lot of cars out front that are with license plates on them. Supposedly, those are employee cars, because they have on any given day, maybe 15 employees, because not only do they have a couple people working in the office, but they have people who, if they're delivering a car to your house, a person is driving your new car to you, or your new used car, and someone's following, so they can bring the person driving your car back. And so there's that going on. Their license, the zoning also says they can't have any more than 1 commercial vehicle on the property at all, behind the fence, and they have at least 3 large trucks and others. And so it just bears some discussion to figure out how they can be in compliance and operate their business without parking all these things out front.
Is it, when you say commercial vehicle, is it like what I would think of as a commercial vehicle, that they're only allowed 1, or is it like a pickup truck or a sedan that has commercial plates?
The latter.
Okay.
Yep.
Fair enough, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no,
Sometimes
it's-
people think, they have like a fleet of cars with commercial plates on them, and they think, well, it's only like, no one's gonna notice, because it's not a huge
Right.
piece of equipment.
Right.
I was just curious.
So,
But they know the rules. I understand that life gets in the way, et cetera, but these aren't things that are a surprise to them anymore.
well, their main office is in Arizona,
Oh, okay.
and I think those are the folks that got the license arranged originally. The folks who we're dealing with right now are fairly new to their jobs in Norfolk, who don't necessarily have the history,
I see.
and they're trying to get the job done locally.
That's actually better news to me than if it's.
So, now we have we've piqued the interest of the folks in Arizona and folks locally, and I said, look, we can have a quick meeting, one of the wonderful things about Zoom is we can all get together, even if we're not in the same place, to understand how it works, and with our, zoning folks there can explain what behind the fence means. I can appreciate if you literally have to drive 5 cars out so that the truck coming by can pick them up, but they can't stay there for any length of time. So it was just, when they said they'd all been moved by noon, and then at 4 o'clock, there were as many as 30 out there, we're kind of going, wait a second, let's just take a step back. We have time to fix this and sort it out, and we'd rather make sure we've been thoughtful about it and bring it back to you with confidence.
So, it does, oddly, it makes me feel better to know that it's people sort of trying to figure out, learning and figuring it out, as opposed to an organization that's been entrenched in Norfolk for 15 years and new, and just were basically like finger symbols that I won't do because of the dreaded FCC, but we all know what I would have done as an example. So, that's it for me. Questions?
Thank you, sir. Last year, I know we waived the fees for our restaurants
Oh,
and
thank
for
you for
our
bringing that up.
taxi service. So I was just wondering, are our restaurants and taxi back in business and doing great, or are they needing our support one last time?
Based on restaurant meal tax receipts, I would say they're maybe not doing back to where they were pre-pandemic, but our revenues haven't tailed off as much as I thought they would have. So on a macro scale, I'd say they're doing fine, and it was our recommendation that, and that's why we put the fees back in your packet, that we charge them again this year. But that's a good discussion point. I apologize I didn't bring it up sooner. It certainly, it's at the board's discretion. I mean, you could.
I guess I don't have the information to know
Right, I don't-
whether they're,
Should we
like if they
table-
need our if they need our support, I would like to support them. If they don't need it, I don't want to support them. If that makes sense.
The only fee issue that arose was with Four Kicks, because the entertainment license is for Monday through Saturday or Sundays. And I think I put in here the background that they should be charged for a Monday through Saturday and a Sunday, but back in 2000, I have to check my note, 8, or I think it was, the board said, we'll just charge you the one for either one or the other and don't have to. Judith and Four Kicks did have that discussion. They sent her a handwritten note that they'd gotten saying it's only $1,100 this year. So that's kind of been maybe an open issue that just hadn't gotten caught in the past either. I can appreciate if the board wants to continue the $1,100, or you want to charge it because they want it all 7 days. But what I can say is none of the businesses have reached out to us to say we'd really like some support. We didn't actively ask, but we haven't also received any, hey, I could really use some help this year.
And last year, if memory serves, it came to our attention, somebody mentioned either for themselves or their organizations or for somebody else, and Kevin was talking about and people then came forward. So what I would wonder is, I don't necessarily want to see Judith after I make this suggestion, but if we tabled, I don't know, right? Like if I was gonna say, what if we tabled the whole thing till the 21st so that we had the feedback? Because like Anita, I wouldn't necessarily wanna just sua sponte offer people, because we need the money too. Whereas if maybe they were, reluctant to let us know because they'd already flipped side, I don't know. I wouldn't wanna say definitely give folks a break who haven't yet asked for it, but I wouldn't mind giving folks the opportunity to ask. And I don't know whether or not it makes sense to just vote it as is and then allow it for it to be reopened on the 21st, or table the whole thing to the 21st. I throw that out there, and I yield the mic to you because I jumped your wave and started yapping again.
That's okay. First, before we go too far down the road of the restaurants, I just wanted to throw a note in about Carvana. I remember distinctly when we approved them coming in, we had these fears about this giant lit-up, life-size car tower that was associated to some of their other locations in Vegas and Arizona. And we made it very clear then that we did not want this to turn into a showcase for the area. So imagine my surprise when I come out of an establishment close to there late at night and I see an 18-wheeler parked out, exactly, church, an 18-wheeler parked there overnight on the side of 115. I'm sorry, not 115, 1A. So it just seems like something's been lost in that transition between the owners and whatnot, and clearly, this is definitely not what we signed up for when we went on board with making this accommodation for their business to come to town, so.
I said to them, we're thrilled when businesses in our community are doing well, and it seems like you are, and that's great. But the flip side is that's not what the community signed up for, and maybe this site isn't perfect for you anymore. I don't want to talk a business out of my community. That's not good for us, but we also have a zoning change, and I said, I don't think there's an appetite from the community to change this further and have more Class 2 licenses or relax those that there are. So we've got to figure this out. So I said, I'm sorry, at 5:30, I'm going to ask the board not to vote on this. So we can, you deserve that, we deserve that, and we have time to figure it out. So let's do that.
I would like to think that it was operating as intended for some period of time after we initially, issued their approval to be able to move in there. So just would really like to see it get back to that
Exactly.
as soon as possible.
Exactly.
The second thing, as it pertains to the restaurants, speaking from a very high level, restaurants are never going to get back to where they were before, right? There's always going to be a segment of the population that doesn't feel safe going back. They're still working under the, thumb of intense labor shortages, of supply chain issues that are making it difficult to be able to provide for their menu items and whatnot. They are dealing with a lot right now, generally speaking, as an industry. So I do believe that anything that we can do to assist them get over this hump would be appreciated. To that end, though, I think it is worth it for us to put a feeler out there and just say, where are you guys right now? Is this the reality that you're facing right now too? Is this something that we could do to help bridge that gap for you? Just to get the feedback before we arbitrarily make
Right.
a decision. I
Would
think
it-
that makes a whole lot of sense.
Would a break help, or would a
Yeah.
complete abrogation, right?
Yeah.
More information to,
And the taxi service as well, because I know.
Oh,
we
I
were-
understand.
yeah.
So would you want to change the motion to say we vote to renew the licenses and somehow table the decision on fees till the meeting on the 21st? Something like that, or?
Is it better for you or for them to, renew their licenses this week?
More for them than
Housekeeping?
for us.
All right, so then
because
maybe we could bifurcate it,
my-
right?
My reasoning being is that if it's set to the 21st, then it gives them a much shorter time period to get their monies into us and any last details into us, and get their licenses out to them. You also need to sign them all, and there's 39 of them.
Goes back to we need some
Tonight?
stamps.
Um,
Yes,
So I'd say, let's proceed, and then we can put out a communication to them all tomorrow and say, if you'd like to let us know if you have some reason why you would find this be difficult to pay this year, please let us know, and we could amend it on the 21st. And then maybe we're dealing with a smaller group of, and tell us what your issue is, so the board can make a decision on a case-by-case basis. So those who are ready to just move it forward because the license fee is not
$65.
$65 and they're fine with it, thank you. But, perhaps the on-premise alcohol license is different for somebody else,
The $19.50 for Novatos, or,
and they would like to let you know about something going on, and you'd like to consider that.
Yep, I think that's fair.
and I think it's probably pretty easy to amend the motion, right? Because you just basically,
Well, I would vote it as it is and go ahead like you're approving them all, and with a direction to staff to reach out to all of them and ask them to let us know quickly if they would like some consideration about the fee to be paid and what their reasoning is. And then if those come through, let's say we get 3 of them across the board, then we can bring those to you on the 21st, and the board can vote to reduce the license fee for, Joe's Bar and Grill by
I see, so have it do it-
$1,000.
Because this does have it with moving as well with the payment of fees, and just do it as is, and then amend.
Yes.
After additional testimony. Okay. That makes sense to me, does it make sense to you?
Very much so.
Have it all, but
Lovely.
sometimes it's not.
All right, well then I guess we gotta get rolling with some motions, correct?
So just a reminder, I would, when you do the class 2, I would vote it all but Carvana, please.
Do you want to start us?
Sure. I move that the board approve and execute all liquor license renewals for 2022, subject to the receipt of all required documentation, inspections, and payment of fees.
The
Sec-
second? All those in
second.
favor?
Aye. I move that the board approve and execute all common victualler license renewals for 2022, subject to the receipt of all required documentation, inspections, and payment of fees.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Just glad I didn't have to say that word again.
Victualler?
Yeah.
We used to get people defrauding the common victualler all the time. It's a charge.
I move that the board approve and execute all entertainment license renewals for 2022, subject to the receipt of all required documentation, inspections, and payment of fees.
Second?
All those in favor?
I move that the board approve and execute all Class 1, 2, and 3 auto dealer licenseship renewals, with the exception of Carvana LLC, for 2022, subject to the receipt of all required documentation, inspection, and payment of fees.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I move that the board approve and the license renewal.
Execute, she forgot.
Oops.
I move that the board approve and execute the license renewal for Norfolk Town Taxi for 2022, subject to the receipt of all required documentation, inspections, and payment of fees.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I probably would have read that 4 or 5 more times before I realized that there was a word missing.
Sorry about that. Sometimes copy paste is not your friend.
Number
Try to
8?
get it right for next year.
Number 8,
Sure. So, town administrator updates. COVID. So we have had, like the rest of the state, and I think the country, have seen an uptick in cases. We had 28 new cases last week. As of last Thursday, we're up to 1,228. And our 14-day average was back up to 16. So not great. The silver lining is that we're still lower overall than what's happening statewide, and holding our own, if you will, in Norfolk County. Tom Gilbert just put together his latest update that should go up on the Board of Health's page shortly, which covers all that in great detail. And he also indicates in there that 83% of females in Norfolk have received their shots. As you know, we've had trouble getting clear data about what's going on with men, given that the prison factors into the overall numbers. So that's great that it's 83%, but it's still, we would like to see it go higher. To that end, one of the things that we're thrilled about with having put together the Metacomet Health Alliance is that now we share nurses with Rentham and Franklin, and there are 2 booster clinics coming up.
Yay.
Not only the one in Norfolk on the 21st for people over 18 who've need their second or third shot, depending on what they had before. There are 144 doses that will be available, and it's right on our website. People can sign up for that. Besides that, they're also holding a clinic in Rentham on the 16th, and people could go to that as well. So while people have the opportunity, it's challenging right now to go to, say, a Walgreens or a CVS, we are rolling out some clinics. And I joined a conference call with state last Friday, and the governor and the lieutenant were on it, and said the issue is that we have plenty of vaccine in the state. That's not an issue at all. It's enough capacity of people to give shots. So they've reversed their stance from the spring, when if you weren't able to do a certain number of shots daily for a period, you couldn't have a clinic. Now it's, please have clinics. We want every opportunity we can to get shots into arms. So we are doing that, and also aware that our school district had a 5 to 11 group for shots a couple weeks ago, and they have a second round for those kids on the 13th. So it's all happening, and that's all good. Somewhat along the lines of ARPA funds, we continue to work on how are we going to spend our funds. The general areas that we are focusing on are spending some dollars to further the work done already to consider a 4th source of water. With the 40Bs that we're working, that are starting, you see them coming, with possibly development of Southwood Hospital in the future. It's not too soon to get that going, and we've already identified, some sources from the planning that went into Holbrook that we can build on. So we're waiting for a estimate, scope of work from our engineers to work on that further. That's a major area. Being able to take the next step with design of a downtown sewer district, building off of the master plan. I think I told the board that Senator Roush's office put an earmark in the state's ARPA fund budget for $100,000 for that, which means that just doesn't have to come out of the other ARPA funds. So that's great news. We are waiting on conservation to give a green light to studying their land over next to Freeman Kennedy as kind of want to make sure that can be a go before we sign up for that. Stormwater, those are some larger costs coming in the next few years, and if we can spend some of the ARPA funds to pay for that rather than the town's budget, that would be great. I'd actually like to have, I think it's been a few years since stormwater was really talked about at board level, and it's probably a good idea to refresh people's memory about that. So, not particularly exciting topic, but it's going to be important, and it's going to be expensive, because the $50,000 a year we've been spending has been the low end of the scale. As we plan for what we're going to have to do, but we're going to have, like every community in the country, we're going to have to ramp up what we do to meet stormwater requirements, and this will help us with that for the immediate future. We also could do some work to either replace aging water mains or ones that are, transite pipe. So that's an eligible source. We could possibly extend water mains in places we don't have water now. That's a possibility. Of course, we're gonna spend some money on public health and the Health Alliance that we've already started. And as you know, we're kicking off the website. We actually had our first design team meeting this afternoon. So we're working, I say all this because we're working towards bringing you a plan that we want you to discuss and again, give us a green light or send us back to do more work about. We have a few years to spend it, but we want to make sure we give you a thoughtful plan. So just want you to know that that's coming. Open meeting law training on next Thursday, the 16th. What started as just open meeting law and public records request training for permitting boards has become training for everybody. So we'll make sure everyone has a Zoom link. We're going to post one agenda for every board so that anyone who wants to join in, it will be taped. You don't have to watch it on the 16th.
Or we can watch it again and again.
Or you could, yes.
Pop popcorn.
When friends come
Our new
over.
council is going to be doing it. It's complimentary. And it's never a bad thing to just make sure any newbies or anybody who just wants to really brush up.
Open meeting law.
Not open to the public, though, just for boards and committees.
It's gonna be a posted Zoom meeting, so yeah, everybody can watch it. I wouldn't mind if the public watch it. That would be great.
Oh, they'll be taking notes.
So,
Someone tell me why CC Day time.
so just shout out for that. On the 21st, we have the Fire Station Building Committee coming to see us to make a presentation about the feasibility, what they found about the existing building, what that could cost to renovate and expand versus build new on the same property, build new and tear down old. Those are basically the two directions we're looking at, what it could cost, what hopefully every detail you could ask for. And I should say we will be hopeful that you will find it compelling and want to give us direction to continue to work on that. So that's coming. I had a chance to catch up with Jessica Peppel today, the Diversity and
Yep.
Inclusion Manager for KP. And she's gonna send us the draft master plan that they're working on. And it's all very exciting. She's also going to allow us to join some of the training sessions they're having over at the Norfolk schools about race and diversity and then hiring practices, and I think we can learn some great things from that. I was interested to know that each of the 4 school districts all have developed equity committees. And I think it's something, once we see the master plan and we can learn from our own school district, is that something we want to do? Are we not ready for that? Is good things to talk about in the future. And then lastly, Judith's been doing some work to understand what it would cost to put together a newsletter. That was a goal the board had talked about. We're modeling an 8-page newsletter on slightly heavier than basic paper stock, mailed to every home like we do with the warrant. It'd be about $1,500 each time. So if we were to do it quarterly, it would be $6,000 a year. So we can consider putting that in the budget, or we can think about other options. Perhaps we launch a newsletter through the new website and also mail it to people who somehow want to identify that they like that rather than mailing it to all. I think we have things we could talk about, but we just wanted to let you know that we're working on those as well. So I think that is everything I wanted to tell you.
Any questions?
The vaccinations, I think that's awesome. Have we reached out, obviously, Council on Aging, we're getting people over there?
Yes, so that's where it's gonna be held,
Yay,
Yep.
excellent,
so, yes.
excellent, thank you.
And I'd just say we recommend, hope everyone will consider getting, if they haven't gotten vaccinated, do that, and if they've gotten, to find that booster shot, and hopefully right in town.
It's interesting, apropos of what you had mentioned about there's not a shortage of boosters or doses, but of people. I had filled out the paperwork to just go over to the Brigham to get the booster at the same time as I needed to get I figured, I'll get my flu and whatever else is at this time of year. And they called me today and they said, we don't do, or yesterday I guess, we don't do vaccinations anymore. We don't do not only just the booster, but any of the vaccinations anymore. Because I'm sure it's because it's like time value of money. They've run the numbers and they're not because they're so buried and there's so many people now who want vaccines. It's just not good business for them anymore. So they're like, we don't do it. There's not enough. It's a manpower issue rather than a dosage issue. I was like, well, that sends me back to the CVS website, which is daunting. So I'll man up later on this evening. Anyway, so Kevin?
Blythe, the update from Board of Health, 83% of women are vaccinated. Is that everybody eligible, like including kids aged 5 through 11?
I'll have to look more closely at Mr. Gilbert's.
Just curious,
update.
that's all. I didn't know if you knew off the top of your head.
I don't.
Because that would be pretty impressive if that's the case, given the short window for kids and knowing how difficult it is to get your kids in to get vaccinated right now. But either way, still very impressive nonetheless and good to hear. Yeah, that's all the questions I had. Thank you.
And with the Jessica Peppel, the training, I'd love to have members of the police there because they are behind. So I think that's a really a big opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're moving on to number 9, right?
So we have 6 warrants for the board's approval as listed on the warrant, agenda, sorry.
I'll go. I move that the board approve 6 warrants for the period November 16, 2021, December 3rd, 2021, as printed on the agenda for this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I guess that brings us to 10.
I move that the board approve the meeting minutes for November 2nd, November 9th, and November 16th, 2021.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ooh, I forgot to vote.
Oh, there'll be letters. Do we have any motions to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is it true that we have all of those signing things right now? All right, let me get my pen.